Hey everybody, welcome to Geeksvana Live. Thank you very much for joining us here on a Sunday afternoon. Actually, 1 second, let me just give that a little tweak. Microphone seems to have gone a bit lower. But thank you for joining us on a Sunday afternoon, which is an unusual time for us to be broadcasting, but we've got a busy week ahead. And I did promise, as per my post on LinkedIn and the community tab, that we would come back and discuss this story as and when we had some more facts, which we now actually do. Which is obviously both good from the point of view that facts are starting to come out, but obviously not necessarily a good thing in terms of what it means for everybody, basically, and what it could mean for the future. Now, today's going to be a little bit controversial. I've got a bit of an opinionated message at the end of this show. And I don't apologize for it, but I apologize if anybody's offended by it. But I think that the conversation in terms of drones and the hobby and regulation, etc., needs to evolve, and I think we need to evolve as a community potentially as well. But thank you very much for everyone that's joining us, coming in, all the channel members. It's good to see you all. We will come through and go through your comments after we've covered the main topic here today, as we usually do now, of course. So over the past couple of days, or the past few days, a story has been heavily featured in most news cycles around the world, really, focused on a suspected drone incident where a Super Scooper, one of these fantastic aircraft, which I'm absolutely obsessed with, it's a firefighting aircraft on loan from Canada to assist in the efforts to control fires that are currently burning in Los Angeles. It's obviously an extremely tragic situation over there. It was found to have damage by a maintenance crew when it returned from missions. Now, the now famous picture of the wing showing an impact hole gave rise to the speculation that if it was a drone hit, there could even be debris within the wing itself. Now, this is obviously something which is already caused a lot of controversy from the point of view that it was very interesting to see the press absolutely go a little bit crazy in terms of insisting this was already a drone. This has to be probably one in 100, maybe even a couple of hundred stories where it's actually turned out that what it actually did involve was a drone, and it's incredible, frankly, that that we get so many reports like that. It's also a bit of an issue from the point of view. Let me just bring this picture up of the wing so you can see it. We've also got a picture of the drone, which hasn't seemed to have loaded properly. So I'm going to bring that. So as you can see, it's punched a significant hole. And before we had confirmation or any kind of evidence in terms of it being a drone, obviously we needed to pump the brakes and just be a little bit careful in terms of what we said, because of course this could have a significant impact on things. But we do now have this image of the offending item, shall we say. Sorry to reload that, but it seems to have failed on our loader for some reason. There we go. Never say I can't deal with an issue live on air. But yeah, so this is basically the drone that's been found. Obviously, a lot of you are going to be recognized in that. We're going to come back and talk about that in a moment. But they've found the debris within the wing, which obviously makes sense. A lot of people, when they saw the initial photo of the wing, said, well, if this is a drone, there's probably going to be bits of drone inside there. And sure enough, there was. Since then, the drone community was obviously waiting with bated breath to see what evidence might actually come from the initial investigation. Well, the FBI had, through local news reports, but also via press release, have confirmed that parts of a drone have indeed been recovered. Let's firstly take a look at the image again. Let's bring that up on screen. Here we go. This is the image that we've obtained. It's clearer than some that are out there, actually, which is good to see what it actually tells us about the drone in question. As you can see from the image, it would appear that it is a sub 250 gram drone made by DJI. The manufacturer isn't too much of a surprise, really, is it? As the Chinese drone maker are a dominant force. So it's not really too much of a surprise when there's a drone incident that it involves one of theirs, frankly. From these parts, it would appear to be either a Mini 3 or Mini 4 model. Looking at the body of the drone, if you look at the top part here, I'm having to manually load this each time, apologies. You can see the position of the holes that would house the avoidance sensor looks like the Mini 3 Pro to me, with the more recent styling of the the 249 gram part there on the battery. Now, if we take a very quick look at a Mini 3 Pro we have here, you can see these holes that are in the picture and that very distinctive top case, and of course the battery with those insignias on there, with the detailing on there, the lettering, ultralight 249 grams, which is incredible when you think just how light this particular drone is, frankly. Now, although you might think that seems a lot of damage for a 249 gram drone to make on an aircraft wing, well, there are actually many factors that can impact that. However, the drone battery seems to have been the principal part of the drone to survive. If we bring that image up, you can see that obviously the drone battery seems to have almost seemingly pulling parts around it into the wing. So it doesn't really matter what size of drone the battery is from, coming into contact with a plane being flown at relatively low speed, although of course fast in the grand scheme of things. But in terms of aircraft, this aircraft isn't particularly fast, and of course it's in a dumping run, so it's going at a particular designated speed. A lump of a battery could be expected to cause some damage. Certainly, I mean, it is literally like I wouldn't call it a flying bullet quite, but it's certainly like a flying rock coming through the air. So as I was saying, you can see it on the Mini 3 Pro battery here. It's similar to the one in the picture, and you can see that this would be a projectile, would still cause a chunky impact. It still feels very light. It's one of the reasons why we have issues in terms of people taking seriously the issue that drones can cause to aircraft, because obviously, you know, especially with the battery out, this really does feel like a very, very light thing. And these are designed and built to be as light as possible. And without the battery, they certainly feel frangible, but it is that core lump of battery that any design would not be able to get around. Well, so far anyway, who knows what's in the future. Other parts in the picture seem to show, let me just bring that back up here. The top body casing and a couple of arms and motors, again supporting the thought perhaps that the battery has been forced through the wing, carrying essentially the upper and front parts, so you can almost see the angle. With the parts that have survived, you can almost tell the angle that it's actually hit the wing at. And as much as the drone is created with lightweight aerodynamics in mind, so of course are most aircraft. The Super Scooper will not be built to withstand contact with other aircraft or enemy fire or anything else like that. Or frankly, any other aircraft, be they manned or unmanned. It is often manned aircraft that are actually more fragile in terms of skins, etc., that drones flown in the lower airspace will come across. So it isn't really the heavyweight airliners and that type of thing, even though those, you know, that they are built to take quite a whack. We are talking about most of the aircraft that we will come across in the lower airspace as drone pilots, as drone users, are going to have that fragility to them, frankly. In terms of tracking down the pilot, well, the full resources of the FBI are now in full flow to track and apprehend them. The FBI has confirmed that the debris is going through forensic analysis, including checks for DNA and fingerprints, etc. Beyond any fine or punishment for the flight itself, it almost seems a side issue from that point of view. I would expect that to be the least of the offending drone users' issues, with many other potential life-changing federal offences coming into play. This is a very serious investigation. In terms of remote ID, we've heard this being discussed on this particular story and drone registration. This is actually of no assistance with this investigation whatsoever. It's a non-point, as it were. As it stands, a recreational drone like the one pictured in the evidence bag is not subject to registration and therefore is not required to broadcast a remote ID signal. Authorities tell us that counter-drone technology has now been brought into the fire areas and therefore future flights will be tracked in real time. Certainly those made by flyers of common brands like DJI, etc., will be very easily tracked, as it were. So that's going to be interesting. Sorry, just delaying ads there as far as I can. Although, as we have discussed previously on this channel in several shows, that isn't the only way authorities can find the drone user in situations like this. A digital footprint of using a drone in connection with other technology on the person and around them can actually lead authorities straight to them. It takes more time to do that to do it that particular way, but it isn't a simple case of getting away with it in the moment, sort of, you know, the old sort of the bank robbery type thing of in the 70s. As long as you get away from the police, you're gone. That with modern technology, with all the technology we carry on us, etc., the drone itself, of course, there is so much of a digital footprint that it is unlikely that there will be no trace whatsoever. and certainly obviously traces that tend to lead back to people. The FAA has also confirmed that no clearances have been provided to any drone user outside of emergency services and firefighting efforts within the temporary flight restrictions, which is actually an interesting one from the point of view, of course, that there was almost a Reddit folklore that people had narrowed down exactly who this drone pilot was. It was a professional drone pilot with a large drone, etc. Some even naming them, which obviously at this stage is just going too far, frankly. But certainly there are no news drones, nothing else that within the TFR zones at the time of going to press, at the time of the last FAA update, that had any kind of clearances. So any drones in that situation, in that area, are certainly flying against the TFR. Of course, until such time as an arrest is made and interviews take place, we've got no way of knowing why this particular person decided to fly within the fire zones and what they were hoping to achieve. We don't know if it was malicious or unintentional. We have no idea from that point of view. It's interesting. I would have thought, being such a controversial situation, not all TFRs end up showing on the DJI app in the States. Of course, here in the UK and the EU, we no longer have the restrictions pop up in quite the same way as far as entering clearances and that type of thing. We now have messages that we have to clear. But there is a possibility as well that there would have been messages and even steps to go through in terms of actually getting the aircraft to take off within that TFR as well. So it's going to be interesting to see just how malicious or naive the pilot was. But the sheer level of posts showing pictures and videos of the devastation taken from drones that have been posted across social media from drone users, some of them actually established YouTube channels who are known to the drone community, has been shocking to me. When you look at the posts, you try not to judge in terms of restrictions that might have been in place. I've made specific videos about this before in terms of, not being the drone police, in terms of every photo that you see, immediately jumping to comment, how high were you flying? Did you have permission? All that type of thing. But these flights really do look like they are blatantly within those TFRs. The shots and footage could be from before a TFR was in place, and we haven't sat and geolocated all the locations to see if they were inside the restrictions. So we tend to, move on, as it were, scroll on. But the fact that there is so many of the posts that are now disappearing from social media does seem to suggest that people are either being approached by the FAA or deciding to listen to comments on the posts and remove what appears to be footage of blatantly illegal drone flight. So the fact that this has been confirmed as a drone is no real surprise. The sheer number of drones still being flown in these areas means it was perhaps only a matter of time before one of them ended up hitting something or being recovered somewhere that they shouldn't be. That isn't an easy statement to make, of course, but it is a fact. There have been so many across social media. The problem we have as drone users is that there are a large number of people using the devices that we love, these little drones, and that many of us fly without issue perfectly legally, but those people fly without a care in the world. In fact, when challenged on social media, the responses by some of the drone pilots have been to ridicule those raising the issue and calling them rule followers or sheep and all the usual types of slurs. There are two major points that most of these rule breakers fail to see. The first one, most importantly, is when you fly your drone like an idiot far from your location or within an area like this story where you are likely to come across other aircraft, highly likely in fact, you are only risking the price of a drone for yourself and potentially, of course, serious criminal charges. However, the people flying the other aircraft have their lives on the line, let alone the issues that an aircraft coming down or having other problems could cause on the ground. What might seem like a rebellious way to stick it to the man is actually a pretty scary prospect to the people in the other aircraft. Those people have taken a lot of safety precautions to try and fly safely. You've got no idea the safety protocols and the danger that the crews of these super scoopers are under, hence the crash last year. And actually have those people get back to their loved ones and not cause harm to other air users, only for the what could really happen and it wouldn't cause any damage brigade to send it anyway. Perhaps as a drone community, it's time we stopped talking about how little damage a drone can cause a manned aircraft and start to unite to condemn this type of flippant drone use. The messaging needs to be simple. Don't do it, stupid. Not a discussion on what damage might it do anyway, and a helicopter downdraft would push it away. I see this all the time. And, I'm not arguing with those points, but it's time we started to move on in terms of the messaging that we're putting out. All of these things that we hear regularly, of course. The second major point these rule breakers forget is that drone flight is a privilege and not a right. The use of regulated airspace is something we could actually lose very quickly. An instance like this, coupled with the countless posts of fire locations posted by drone pilots, gives anyone who wants to stop the hobby and industry plenty of ammunition to do so. I've said many times before on this channel that we as drone users give authorities all the ammo they need on social media, boasting about how far they've flown or how high, or posting clearly illegally gained footage, only to then comment on new restrictions claiming that they're not needed. It's always the way. The safety record of the drone and RC hobby over the decades has been incredible, with very few serious issues arising. However, most of that was achieved through dedicated hobbyists learning their skills and operating safely and responsibly. But things are changing, and the profile, particularly of camera drone users, is changing fast as the technology becomes easier and easier and capable of more complex flight without having a single skill, frankly. Take me, for example. I include myself in this. I have flown countless hours of camera drone flights with all types and sizes of drone that are in the main autonomous in some form or other, with the drone algorithms doing the heavy lifting, with me pushing the sticks to control the general line of flight. I let go of the sticks, the thing hovers, etc. If it comes up to an object, it will go round that object. Then take my more recent moves into flying FPV, which through drones like the amazing DJI Avata series mean I can still fly with lots of assistance from the drone. It makes me feel a little bit more cool putting the goggles on and flying FPV that way. I hesitate to even call it FPV, as to me that should describe fully manual flight with a quad, of course. I am now flying in manual mode, but it's a steep learning curve, especially as an old man. And if I had to complete all of my other flights that I have in manual mode, I'm pretty certain there'd be a lot more crashes and not much usable footage from them. Although, as a side note, I did complete my GVC test in ATI mode with an Inspire 1, which is probably more manual than most people that have been tested. We talk about the drone community and the drone hobby as if it's a tangible and controllable entity, and I don't think it is. The idiotic use of small consumer drones is on the rise, and we need to show a united front. When we give even a millimetre to breaking the basic rules that are there for safety reasons, and I mean the core principles around drone use that we all agree are needed, when then we send a message to the new drone flyer who already doesn't care about the rules, that gives them false confidence, then we'll be left without a hobby that we love. Excuse me, something to kill the adverts again to take my flow away. It's lovely, isn't it? Thank you, YouTube. Now, the idiots breaking these basic rules, they won't care. They have no sense of community or responsibility to keep the hobby going. They just purchased a drone and got some clicks and likes on Instagram, whatever they were trying to do. If it was all restricted out of use, then they will just move on to the next thing. So stop trying to protect them or frankly change their minds. It isn't going to happen, in my opinion. We need to ensure that the pushback against unfair regulation happens. It's important, in fact, it's vital, but we also need to consider our messaging in terms of how others less experienced and looking for an excuse might take that. Just my opinion. This drone flight happened in an area where there are active flight restrictions, and so many emergency service operations happening to fight fires and save lives. This essential aircraft has been taken out of service for days, even with the parts and repairs happening with an urgent and expedited timescale. There is no excuse, no reasons, no justification that anyone can use to say it wasn't dangerous, to say it wasn't an idiotic thing to do. This incident will impact drone freedoms in the United States and probably elsewhere like the UK as well. We all know how they like to hit us over the head with even a potential of an issue. We argue that our drones do not need tracking, and the how do I put this the correct way? We argue that our drones do not need tracking, and the hours perhaps do not, because we are responsible flyers. So we don't think that our drones need tracking because we don't feel that way, because obviously we are responsible, we fly legally. But the technology of camera drones is now so simple that any idiot can and is picking it up and flying it. So perhaps we need to actually help authorities a little, come up with ways to help solve this particular problem and help track these drone users. You don't like remote ID, drone registration? Well, if this kind of thing keeps happening, you won't have consumer drones left to track or register, if that isn't already the course that we're on, which is one of the biggest fears that I have, frankly. Okay, that's my 2 penneth worth. Let's go across and see how people are reacting to this news, and I suppose the opinions stated are actually those of the channel for once, and see what people are saying on this one. And the pre-show chat was certainly focused on certainly looking at what type of drone it was and that type of thing, which I think everybody is agreeing here that it's a Mini 3 Pro. And this one, Northern Tier FPV, good to see. Whoever it was must not know what a TFR is. Surprised it was even able to fly in those high wind conditions. Truly a non-experienced operator. Not good for the hobby for sure. Yeah, but I agree with that entirely, and actually every stage of that comment completely. But how do we deal with it? Because we're in a situation now where we need to deal with this situation, and we need to get past this somehow in terms of dealing with what is a very serious situation for the hobby and the industry, frankly, because this is just something which could have a really big impact on it, basically. Does the battery in the evidence bag look like an extended one? Let me have a look. Good to see you, Jonathan. I don't actually think it does, to be honest. Let me try. This is going to absolutely kill it, but I'm going to try and zoom in slightly on this. I don't think, unless they've added the sticker afterwards, I don't think that as standard they have the 249 sticker on there, but I've seen the 249 stickers that you can buy. So it doesn't appear to be, but I'm obviously not ruling that one out without being able to see it, basically. Yeah, exactly. Amok Time Flies there saying the same thing. It wouldn't have the 249 gram, but you can actually get those stickers, frankly. Yeah, Cybria's Mini 3 Pro, no way it could do that much damage to an aircraft. DJI FPV, yes, I think they're doing fake news to ban drones. No, we need to try and get past this. This aircraft, this particular aircraft with this particular piece of damage here, which is this beautiful machine flying here. These are, just like our drones, aircraft are produced to be lightweight, something that is carrying 1,400 litres or something of water, something like that, doesn't have space for anything else in there in terms of extra weight, etc. And in fact, planes that are smaller than that, I would argue, if there was a direct impact, of course, it's so difficult. Even if you wanted to fly a drone into a small aircraft, it's a tough thing to do. So these are the odds and everything else like this. You know, obviously there's the thing that anything that can happen will eventually happen, etc. But the odds of these things happening are fairly difficult anyway. But of course, you putting your drone up in a TFR make it happen. But yes, the damage is absolutely possible with that size. This little battery flying at that kind of speed, because of course the aircraft is flying along into that wing, can absolutely do that. Impact damage of something hitting something else can be quite major, frankly, depending on the circumstances, depending on the aircraft it's hitting, etc. So no, I honestly do not believe this is anything to do with any kind of fake news. And that's exactly the kind of response that I don't think is going to help us, because we need to find a way through this. We need to look beyond this kind of situation where we're thinking, is this fake news? And we need to look to actually, how do we stop the drone pilot putting his drone up there in the first place, frankly, because it just shouldn't be there. Yeah, exactly. Omegerd says, why not choose to contribute instead of getting in the way in a situation like this, even just keeping the band space clear for EMS drones? it's there is a, and I'm not saying I don't understand, particularly the naive user. There's a fairly famous clip here in the UK of somebody who was found on a Devon beach by the excellent Devon and Cornwall police, and they basically come across a drone flyer who was flying in a temporary restriction for an air show, and he was flying a mini drone. I'm not even sure if it was as modern as the Mini 3 Pro actually. But he brought the drone back and landed it, and he kept sort of insisting to the officer, no, it's okay, it's a toy, it's a toy. And I understand it, because this does feel small and lightweight and toy-like. But however you feel about the regulations, however you feel unfair or fair they are, if this kind of incident happens and we don't get behind some kind of effort to try and stop these idiots, to try and call these people out on social media when this kind of thing happens, then we are going to get regulated into oblivion. And it doesn't matter that we can sit here and say it was unfair, in my opinion. It doesn't matter that we can sit here and complain about it and be justified by that, because you'll be justified and frankly sitting in a situation where it's just not happening anymore. So what height is the aircraft flying at? I guess under 120 meters. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. It will be flying under there. AI, but well, if the user was breaking the law, let's hope they're caught and punished for the sake of users that comply with the rules. We don't need tougher rules. Yeah. But it's the same thing, isn't it? It isn't your average user of anything that ever gets new regulations happening. Of course, we are talking about drone use and camera drones. The technology is far outstripping and is very, very difficult to keep up with in terms of regulation and that type of thing, and finding that sweet spot. But for this kind of thing, we need to find something. I'm not even necessarily saying I have the answers. I certainly don't. I don't think any one person does. But if we can come together as a community, come together with authorities, frankly, and find a way through this, that's what needs to happen. And HD Warrior, can't quite see a 250-gram drone doing this level of damage to the wing. If it were a drone, why is it so much of the body left intact? Because it's actually not much of the body intact in actual fact. And I don't mind this, this being a, I would much rather find things that I have issue with. But traveling at, it's still relatively low speed, but traveling at the speeds that they're traveling at, when you get something like this, let me just move this over to the right here so we can keep it in picture a little bit. But essentially, when this is hit, the driving force of this would have been the battery. So in my opinion, you've got the battery here, obviously in the bottom of the quad here, and as it's hit, the battery itself has essentially pushed this stuff through, which is why you've only got these bits, and the rest of it that was behind the drone, under the battery, etc., will have just absolutely shattered and fallen on the ground, and these bits would have been driven into the wing. So it unfortunately, actually, to me personally, and I'm not an engineering expert, etc., but from everything that I've learned over the years from this type of issue, this actually does make some sense, sadly. So yeah, I think it absolutely can cause that much damage. The drone could have been used by a news crew getting footage, as they weren't allowed to fly a helicopter near the fires. Yeah, I mean, who knows? Who knows? It is I would say it is unlikely, only because the footage that's then used would need to be verified, and the footage that's being used would need to be analysed and that type of thing. There's a lot of protocols that it goes through. Anyone that's ever had anything picked up by local or national news will know that there are protocols they go through, or rather should go through. Having said that, had some footage go through without that, but anyway, and certainly the after analysis will be close. So I don't think there would be many. I'm not holding news crews up as bastions of doing the right thing all the time, and who knows. But I don't think that it would necessarily. It would be a very easily trackable thing, and jobs would be gone, and criminal records would be gained, etc. If that happens. Simon Stickland, decades ago, I saw an RC car being approximately 370 grams, punched a hole through a Range Rover door. This plane damage does not surprise me. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me, I have to say, in terms of the debris and everything. It does, unfortunately, kind of fit, as it were. Anyone have thoughts on the cost of the damage to the aircraft, cost of downtime, cost of loss of service in an emergency, etc.? I would anticipate a few months and a few 100K before cleared to fly. Well, in actual fact, because of the type of aircraft, because of the specialism, they're actually expecting the aircraft to be back in service by Monday, which tells us obviously that, of course, a drone hitting, although it looks dramatic, a drone hitting this aircraft hasn't caused, by the looks of it, any structural damage. I've seen the parts that have been dispatched. There was a press release from the company that have released them, that have sent them urgently expedited, and it's the parts you would expect to see in terms of the cards essentially that are holding the shape of the wing going along. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there's been several points of damage of this type. In my post before this video, one of the reasons why I held off until we had some evidence that this was a drone is because actually these kinds of aircraft do get damaged. They're flying very low to the ground. They're also partly submerging themselves in water as well, of course, to actually pick the water up. So the potential for hazards, the potential for damage is higher. But of course, that doesn't mean that we can then, allow drones to be flown around them because they get other damage. But yeah, I don't know about the cost, because there's also in terms of repair, because there is also a speed and a specialism to this. So I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, we saw the helicopter that was struck by a drone on the main prop was an incredibly high cost, but that's mainly because once there's been damage, they generally have to replace with new, and as you say, then get recertified. In terms of cost of loss of service, well, all of the aircraft were downed for a short period. And of course, this one is now out of service over the weekend. So I don't think you can even necessarily be concerned about the money, the financial side of it. I'd be concerned in terms of, what could this aircraft have done to help stop those fires, frankly. And it's such a shame, because we are, we're sitting here watching the news, we're reveling in these incredible aircraft stepping up and doing the job, some really brave guys doing their job and actually saving lives. This cannot be a simple job to do, and it absolutely breaks my heart when I see the thing I love in life, drones, and I do love drones. Drones have given me a lot in my life, actually being used in this way. Because of course, pretty much everybody watching this show right now, pretty much everybody out there, it's something where we all fly responsibly, and we find this to be such an extraordinary thing. But this is a major issue for us, and we need to stop now before anybody's hurt, before this starts happening in a more regular basis. The fact that there are actually enough comments in the chat of people that think this might be fake news isn't, in my opinion, just a comment on the wider society and the way that news is handled in the world these days. But it actually is exactly what I was saying, because we talk so much in the drone community about something not being able to cause damage and something it won't happen and it's safe and it's always on that positive side of things way too far. The pendulum has swung in those terms way too far to one side. And I'm not saying drones are dangerous. I'm not saying drones will take people's lives or anything else like that. But we have to be realistic, and we have to be realistic in terms of how authorities and how Joe Public view these things. Look at the reaction to the New Jersey drone sightings and the USAF bases here in the UK. The public were deeply concerned, afraid, seeing things in the sky, etc. We need all these people on our side if we want to keep the privilege that we have to use the airspace, frankly, to be able to do that. So yes, that was a long answer to that. I do apologise. UK Bubblers, good to see you. Hope you're well. I reckon the consumer drones will be banned within the next 2 years. I don't necessarily think that is the case. As I say, I worry that we're already on a course where we're going to see a lot more. I mean, my fear in terms of the drone community, my phone is actually my teleprompter, so I'm going to use my phone in a second, is that what we're going to end up with, because of more and more technological restrictions as well, is essentially flying mobile phones. So the drone itself will know where the restrictions are and if it can take off. And we're going to be marking on a Google map where we want it to fly, and the drone will take off, and we'll do that if it's it got clearance. You know, it will get automatic LANC approval. It will get it will check airspace here in the UK. So that's unfortunately where I think we could be heading if we don't change things. If you look at the most recent CAA public consultation that they put out, they talked a lot about this in terms of software being placed on consumer drones that would both check your competency and that type of thing, but would have a lot more in terms of geofencing back on those drones to be able to stop them taking off. I mean, perhaps that's one of the most simple situations. If that drone is in a TFR or a temporary restriction here in the UK, or of course a permanent restriction, it just won't take off. The only problem with absolutes of that type is that you end up with a situation where people think it's safe to fly, like they did before when we had those restrictions on the DJI drones here in the UK. They thought if the drone lets them take off, they're fine. And of course, there are so many factors in airspace and ground and everything else that we all know as responsible flyers that need to come into contribution from that point of view. So yeah. Yes, absolutely. Say what drone that will be up and repaired Monday. And Trevor, good to see you, Trevor. Here in Australia, we've had a number of near misses around fires this season, and yeah, it happens. I mean, and to be frank, there is nothing stopping the Royal Air Force Wing Commander Rebecca Rowlands came on this channel for an interview. Go and have a read of a watch of that interview, because it is fascinating. The RAF themselves say, you know, they don't want to stop people enjoying their drones. They don't want to stop people enjoying their hobby. They understand why any kind of aviation, any kind of fun in the sky is attractive, but they again just want things to happen in a much more responsible manner. Hence, they've got a free phone number for everybody to be able to report their flights, so they can tell their flight crews about those drone flights. They can avoid the area or keep an eye out for them, etc. So there are ways of doing this. There are ways of ensuring that we can all share that airspace, frankly. Yeah, that's a very, very good point from Simon there, actually. It's actually just skipped on because there's some wonderful people leaving some great comments. I'm going to go back up because I want to ensure we do give people enough time to comment. But it was Simon along the lines of it could have actually been opened up a bit more to get the drone, because it will be interesting to see whether or not this picture is after the recovery of the items or not. It almost feels as well, if you look at where the damage is, again, I'm going to zoom in on this a little bit, and this is all complete speculation on this part of it, but if you look where it is, you have now other aircraft experts in the chat might be able to tell me the name of the cards that sit, which are basically reinforcing the curved structure at the front. They're sort of flat cards. Someone may be able to tell me what the name of those are. But those are obviously placed along the front edge of this wing to help the skin that's then put across it stay there. It looks like it's hit almost at exactly the wrong place. So it's torn the hole, it's punched the hole from that point of view. Now, again, yes, it will be interesting to see if this photo is from when the final reports come out from FAA, etc. Ribs, thank you, Chris Lawrence. Whether or not this was just an unlucky shot, I mean, it's an unlucky shot anyway, between ribs, and that's caused more damage because, as again I say, these wings are not reinforced all the way along. You know, these are not solid metal wings or anything else like that. Obviously, we've got fuel tanks and everything else, but at the front, they're not solid because weight is a big issue. So yes, it'll be interesting to see when the full report does come out in terms of when that photo was taken from that point of view. Mudball Don, good to see you, Don. Any idiot can fly a camera drone. I'm proof of that. Same here, absolutely. And I do have. There is always, when these things happen, I do have a slight pang in terms of concern for the wider FPV and RC guys who have been doing their thing for decades without issue, basically, and now they find their sport and hobby on the front pages. Basically, it's incredible. Yes, there's the comment actually from Simon, just to bring that one up. Amok says, I think the comment about news crews is possible, like estate agents, they sometimes don't even know there are restrictions. Yeah, although there is actually, again, it depends on the level of news, I suppose. But any kind of professional news outfit will have a health and safety, or is it OSHA in the States, a briefing before these things happen, and it will be something where you will have a lot happening, basically, if that makes sense from that point of view. Apologies if we lost part of our signal there for a moment. It's just returned back to normal, so let me just refresh that. Apologies, everybody. You may have had a bit of a breakup there from us. Let me know if it's coming through okay now, in terms of the video, everybody, because we for the first time in many years, we seem to have lost the health of the stream there for a moment. But yeah, so it would be, the fact is, there are criminals everywhere. There are idiots everywhere in every profession, unfortunately, human nature, frankly. But in terms of the steps they have to go through, in terms of the steps they have to go through to be deployed, they're deployed very, very quickly, of course, but they are briefed. There is protocols really to stop the news agency themselves getting sued and fined, etc., and that type of thing. So, okay, thanks, Jonathan, saying it's coming through okay, and Tazzy as well. Thank you to my moderators saying it's come back. Wonderful. Oh my God says, the difficult thing is, as you've said, those that don't care don't care. Yeah, people here are people that do care. Reaching a new audience will be a challenge. Thrill seekers will be looking for thrilling videos, and that is part of the issue. And I don't mean I have a massive issue with I'm being very specific here, but you see the FPV flights that are, along a mountain ridge or something else like that, and there's obviously mountains that are much higher than this ridge and that type of thing, and they're very, very close to the ground, and there's no one there, there's no aircraft in the area, etc. I don't necessarily mean that kind of thing, but when we have situations where we know there are TFRs in position, and we know that those flights are bad, I feel that we do need to start calling people out a bit more. It's human nature. Who hasn't looked at some of these videos, because they are showing some incredible footage, but it's human nature that we're going to watch again. So, as I say, I don't necessarily have the answer to this one. Geeksvana, surely COS can be at a level to block drones in an area, allowing emergency service units to fly on a secure band. Potentially, I think that in itself is blocking anything in terms of signals. And I didn't say good to see you, Simon, before. I hope you're feeling well, sir. It is an issue in terms of blocking signals and then using other signals, in terms of the precision of technology. But at the moment in the UK, as far as I am aware, a lot of the counter drone stuff in terms of locations and events and that type of thing does focus on being able to stop specific drones that are coming into TFRs and knocking those out of the sky and that type of thing. It could well be that if that happens now in these areas, that it could be something that would happen in terms of being able to stop them and land that drone. But who knows? Of course, these are areas where a lot of most of these areas wouldn't normally have any kind of flight restrictions in the areas. They're residential and beach and that type of thing. So it isn't something that you would have had automatically in those locations. And of course, they are running lots of items, lots of kit into the area now. But of course, it hasn't helped them from that point of view. It probably just wasn't even one of their main priorities. But yes. Nigel says, I guess as a government aircraft, they can operate to fix aircraft quickly, yeah, and have their own repair. Exactly. It would cost a bundle. I think if you tried to put that in civilian terms, it really would be. And just mopping up to see if there's anything else there. Oh yeah, thank you, Simon. That's actually an old ID. So I don't mind that being on there. That actually isn't the ID. This is the 3 Pro, and we fly the 4 most of the time now. So this is one of our units used for the reviews and that type of thing as well. But thank you, I appreciate the concern there. Say what drone? This is literally like the Columbia incident. Simple phone damaging what were thought to be indestructible tiles, but speed showed otherwise. Yeah, that's certainly an extreme version of this type of thing, and it's concerning to me from the point of view that people then start to say, okay, it can't possibly be this, it can't possibly be that, because, or even that it's it's fake news. That just isn't I wish, frankly, that we could push this off to being something from that point of view. It would be. Tom Busby, why the vilifying? Because this is a vilifying type of situation, frankly. If we don't get control of this, if we don't stop this, we will not have a hobby. It's as simple as that. If they have to put tech in place every single time something happens, every single time there is an emergency event, they have to put lots of tech in the air, I absolutely guarantee you that the hobby will be gone. It will absolutely be gone. Look at the stats, look at the numbers, the money in drones, everything else like that. It seems incredible to us as people within the hobby and industry. But in terms of the consumer level, in terms of recreational level, in wider economy, it isn't much. They would absolutely take us out of the sky, and we need to stop that. Yes, Bubble Don. Some people in the chat need to take an introductory physics class. Force equals mass by acceleration. Exactly. And a response going out there to Chris. And surely Dev saying, and we all know how DJI is being vilified in the US at the moment, so that's not going to help with it being a DJI. Yeah, it's one of those things, isn't it? It's a nice sort of click for the people that are against DJI on the security side of things. But this is obviously something which is an issue in terms of the wider community of this, basically, as simple as that. So. Okay, so I think we are getting on towards the end of, we've been on air for quite a bit longer than I actually expected I would be, but there's a lot of you coming in, so thank you very much for doing that. If you wouldn't mind hitting the like button before you leave. It's interesting that on a Sunday we had a couple of issues in terms of buffering, so I'll have a look into why that has happened and why that should be happening on a day like today. John Denham says, actually I'll bring this one up, agree it shouldn't be encouraged, this is bad behaviour, but also there's just be another assumption it's a drone. Yeah, exactly. Before the evidence had been released. Exactly, which is why we put out our statement on LinkedIn and on our community tab. We had lots of emails and DMs from people asking if we were going to be covering this story. And I said at the time, no, not until we see some actual evidence of this being a drone, which of course there does appear to now be, basically. Excellent. Okay, well, thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. I really appreciate it. We're on air a good amount this week, although some of the shows are subject to change at the moment due to other things going on behind the scenes. So keep an eye out on the channel. And we've got some very exciting stuff coming this week, actually, including from DJI. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Yeah, we're really looking forward to bringing all that to you. As ever, thank you very much. Please hit the like on the way out. Let's get to over 100 likes before I hit the button off. And Sean out.